Don't come in here thinking this is just another message you can read and close, because if you leave halfway, you will miss the one thing. I can't afford to lose you before I say. Something terrible just happened at my house, and I keep replaying it like it was a line of code I should debugged earlier. Like there was a version of reality where I prevented it, where I saw it coming, where I didn't ignore the small signs that something was already breaking long before it broke. I'm sitting here in the same space where everything shifted, and I need you to understand something very clearly. This isn't about chaos. It's about love. It always starts that way, doesn't it? The most devastating moments don't arrive like storms. They arrive like quiet misunderstandings. Like pauses that last too long. Like a look that doesn't return the way it used to. I was never good at those pauses. I built systems, companies, frameworks for predicting human behavior at scale. I taught machines how to anticipate decisions. But I never learned how to anticipate the moment someone you love stops feeling safe with you. And that's what this is. Not an accident. Not a coincidence. A slow emotional collapse that I only noticed when it was already inside the walls. I keep walking through the house, expecting the air to reset itself. Like time will rewind if I just think hard enough about the moment before it changed. But it doesn't. Nothing resets. That's the first truth I didn't want to accept. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it right now. Let's hit 10K subscribers quickly together, because once we do, there's a surprise waiting for you. And, trust me, you don't want to miss it. And you are the only person I feel safe enough to say this to, because I think if I say it out loud anywhere else, it becomes permanent. Do you know what that feels like? To realize that silence was not peace. It was distance growing quietly between two people who still shared the same space. I thought I was protecting something fragile, but I might have been avoiding it instead. There's a difference, a dangerous one. I keep asking myself a question I don't want answered too quickly. At what point does protecting someone start feeling like losing them? Because I swear I was doing everything right. Or at least everything that looked right from the outside. But love doesn't live on the outside, it lives in the unspoken moments, and those I may have neglected more than I ever admitted. I need you to stay with me here, because what I'm about to tell you isn't just an event, it's a pattern. And patterns are what I understand better than emotions. Except this one. This one broke the system. There was a moment earlier today. Just a moment. Nothing dramatic on the surface, but it stayed. And I hate that it stayed, because now I can't unsee it. I can't unfeel the shift. You know that feeling when someone looks at you and you realize, just for half a second, they are not fully there anymore? Not angry, not happy, just distant. Like they are already somewhere else in their mind. And you are speaking to a version of them that is slowly leaving. That happened. And I didn't stop it. I continued the conversation like it was normal, like I wasn't standing at the edge of something breaking. I want to go back and interrupt myself. I want to grab that version of me and say, stop talking. Listen instead. But we don't get that kind of access to our past selves. We only get consequences. And I think something in this house responded to that emotional distance. That's why I said something terrible happened, because what followed it loud. It was subtle, almost invisible, but emotionally irreversible. A silence fell that didn't belong to the room, it belonged between us. And once you notice a silence like that, you can never pretend it isn't there again. I walked into the kitchen afterward and noticed something small out of place. A cup, still warm, left like someone intended to come back, but didn't feel like they had to explain why they didn't. That's when my mind started doing what it always does. Reconstructing meaning from fragments. And I started wondering if the real event wasn't what happened today. What had been happening for weeks without me naming it? Tell me something. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you stopped checking if they were still emotionally present because physically they were still there? That's where I failed, and I don't say that lightly, because I know how that sounds. But I need you to sit with it for a second, because I think love can survive distance, but it cannot survive invisibility, and I may have made her feel invisible without ever intending it. That realization is what's making it hard to breathe properly right now. I keep thinking about every message I didn't fully read, every reply I gave while thinking about something else. Every moment I chose productivity over presence. And I'm not asking for forgiveness. Not yet. I don't even know if I deserve the word. But I need you to understand the emotional math of it. When someone stops feeling seen, they don't always leave loudly. Sometimes they just start leaving emotionally first. And I think I noticed the emotional leaving too late. There was a sound earlier, not a crash, not anything dramatic, just a small disruption in the house that made everything feel different afterward. And suddenly I was aware of how fragile everything is. when love is no longer fully anchored. I keep replaying the last time she looked at me properly, not as a routine glance, but as if she was deciding whether I was still the same person she once trusted completely. And I didn't ask her what she saw. That might be the most expensive silence I've ever kept, because now I don't know what answer I was avoiding. And I'm starting to fear that whatever happened in this house was just the surface expression of something much older, something emotional, something unresolved. Something I didn't give enough space to breathe before it collapsed. I need you to stay with me, because I haven't told you the real reason yet, not the surface reason, not the visible one, the one that started all of this long before today, and I can feel it sitting right behind my words, waiting for me to admit it fully. But I'm not ready to release it into the air just yet, because once I do, nothing in this story will feel accidental anymore. Everything will make sense in a way I might not be able to take back. And I'm not sure if I want you to see me clearly yet, because clarity changes everything, even love, especially love. Tell me something I can't stop thinking about now. If someone you love starts becoming quieter in the presence of your success, do you assume they are proud? Or do you finally admit they might be disappearing? I didn't answer that question when it first appeared in my life, and now it's answering me instead. There's a part of me that wants to fix everything in one conversation, to walk into the next room and undo the emotional distance, like it was never real. But I've learned something dangerous about emotional distance. It doesn't undo itself. It accumulates, until one day, even love feels like memory instead of presence. And I think I'm standing in that day right now. The house is quiet again, too quiet, and I keep wondering if quiet is what happens after love leaves the room without closing the door, or if I'm just finally hearing what was always there. I don't know which answer is worse, but I know I can't stay in uncertainty much longer, because something inside me is preparing for a decision I haven't made yet, and I'm afraid of what version of me will make it. I should stop here, but I won't, because if I stop now, you might think this is just confusion, and it's not. It's recognition, and recognition always comes right before truth, and the truth is still forming. I can feel it, like a message still being written in a system I can't fully access yet, and all I can do is wait for it to compile, and hope that when it does, it doesn't destroy everything I thought I was building. I'm still here in this house, still listening to what isn't being said, still trying to decide if I should go find her, or if I've already lost the version of her that would have stayed, and I need you to understand something before I go any further. Whatever you think happened here, you're probably not wrong, but you're not fully right either, not yet, because the real story hasn't been spoken aloud, not completely, and when it is, everything between us will shift. I can feel it approaching like a final decision I don't remember agreeing to make, and I don't know if I'm ready to live with what comes after that decision. But I don't think I have a choice anymore. I'm going to continue exactly where I left it, but you need to understand something before this goes further. What I thought was a moment in this house is no longer a moment. It's becoming a pattern that is finally revealing itself in real time. And I can feel it changing me as I speak to you, because now I'm not just remembering what happened. I'm starting to understand what it meant. The house still looks the same. That's the strange part. Nothing is broken in a visible way. No shattered glass that would justify the way my chest feels tight when I walk through the hallway. No obvious sign that something irreversible has already passed through here, and yet I can feel it in every corner, like the air itself has decided not to fully belong to me anymore. I keep stopping in places where I remember she used to stand, not because she's gone, but because I'm not sure she was ever fully here the way I believed she was. That thought is dangerous, because once you start questioning the presence of someone you love, you begin to rewrite your entire emotional history with them. And I don't want to rewrite it, but I also can't ignore what I'm seeing anymore. Earlier, I told you something terrible happened. I didn't correct myself because I needed you to feel the weight of uncertainty the way I felt it. But now I need to be honest with you. Nothing happened in the way people expect when they hear that word. No explosion, no loud argument that echoes through walls, no dramatic betrayal that can be pointed at and labeled. What happened instead was something far more dangerous, something quiet, something that doesn't look like an event until it's already too late. A decision was made in silence, not by me alone, not by her alone, but between us, in the space where communication used to live. And I didn't notice it being made until it had already started shaping reality. That's the part I can't forgive myself for easily, because I built my entire life around understanding systems before they fail, but I didn't recognize the system of us failing while it was still running. I only saw the crash after the logs were already corrupted. There's a strange thing happening inside me right now. Part of me wants to rationalize everything, to break it down into causes. Stress, miscommunication, emotional fatigue, distance created by routine. But another part of me refuses that comfort because I know what happens when you label emotional collapse too quickly. You stop seeing the person inside it, and I refuse to lose her twice. Once in reality, and once in interpretation, so I stay in the uncomfortable middle, where nothing is resolved, and everything still feels alive. I keep thinking about the moment she stopped responding with full sentences. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually, like someone removing words from a conversation one by one until only fragments are left. At first, I thought she was just tired, then busy, then distracted, then something I didn't have a name for yet. And that's the real tragedy. When you don't have a name for emotional change, you underestimate it, and what you underestimate grows unchecked, until it becomes the thing you're standing inside of without realizing it. I remember the exact moment I almost asked her what was wrong. But I didn't, because I thought asking might make it real. And that hesitation, that small delay, might be the most expensive second of my life. I walked past her earlier today, and she didn't look up immediately. Just a fraction of delay. But in relationships, fractions matter more than full moments. A full moment you can explain. A fraction stays unexplainable. It lingers, it rewrites meaning without permission. And I felt it then. Something had shifted, not in what she said, but in what she no longer offered without being asked. Presence, ease, that natural emotional accessibility that used to exist between us without effort. It was gone. And I pretended it wasn't. I want you to sit with that. How many times have we done that in love? Seen the change, felt it clearly, and chosen not to interrupt it because interruption feels like confrontation, and confrontation feels like risk. So instead we choose delay, and delay becomes distance, and distance becomes emotional disappearance. I didn't realize I was participating in that sequence until I was already deep inside it, and now I'm standing in the aftermath of choices I didn't consciously make, but still own. There was a sound in the house again earlier. Still nothing dramatic, but it made her stop mid-action, just pause, that kind of pause that isn't about the sound, it's about what the sound interrupts inside the mind. And in that pause I saw something I was not supposed to see, not anger, not fear, not sadness in its obvious form, but resignation, and that word is heavier than all of them, because resignation is what happens when someone stops expecting emotional repair. I told myself I might be imagining it, that I was projecting, that my mind, overwhelmed by uncertainty, was creating meaning where none existed. But then I saw the way she avoided my eyes later, not aggressively, not intentionally, just naturally. Like eye contact had become something that required effort, she was no longer willing to invest without reason. And that's when I felt it, not panic. Something deeper, recognition, the kind that arrives too late to prevent anything. And I started walking through every conversation we've had recently, like it was a corrupted file I needed to recover. Trying to find the exact point where warmth began to decay. But it doesn't work like that. Emotional systems don't fail at one point. They degrade silently, over time. Until one day you realize, you are no longer inside the same relationship you thought you were maintaining. You are inside the memory of it, and that realization makes the present feel like a misunderstanding. I asked myself a question I didn't want to answer honestly. If she left emotionally before she ever left physically, would I even know what to call it? Because everything still looks intact, we still occupy the same space, we still move around each other, we still perform the structure of a shared life. But something essential has stopped flowing between us. And I think I was the last one to notice, or maybe I was the one who noticed and refused to accept it. There's a difference, a brutal one. I want to tell you something I've been avoiding since the beginning of this confession. I've been trying to fix something that I never properly acknowledged was already breaking. That's why everything feels like it's escalating now. Not because it just started, but because I finally stopped pretending it wasn't happening, and once you stop pretending, everything becomes louder, even silence, especially silence. I found myself standing in the hallway earlier, just listening. Not for sounds, but for emotional signals. That strange human instinct to detect presence and absence. And I realized something unsettling. I don't recognize the emotional rhythm of this house anymore. It used to have a certain predictability, ladder at certain hours, soft routines. Small predictable exchanges that created the illusion of stability. Now it feels like I'm living inside a place that remembers how to function, but no longer does, and she is still here, physically. But I don't know what version of her I am interacting with anymore, and that thought is starting to fracture me in ways I can't easily explain, because if the person you love becomes emotionally unreachable while still present, what exactly are you holding on to? A person? Or the shape of a memory that still moves? I want to go to her. I want to fix this in a single moment, one conversation that resets everything. But I've tried that before in smaller ways. And I remember what happened, or more accurately, what didn't happen. No resolution, just deflection or silence. And silence, repeated enough times, becomes a form of answer. There is something else I haven't told you yet. And it has been sitting inside me since the beginning of this story. I keep saying something terrible happened in this house. But what I haven't said clearly is this: the event I'm reacting to might not be external at all. It might be emotional recognition finally catching up to reality. And that's why I can't sleep, because once recognition starts, it doesn't stop at one conclusion. It keeps unfolding, rewriting everything it touches. I keep asking myself if I am the cause of this distance, not in a simple guilty way, but in a structural way. Did I build a life so focused on progress, control, and forward motion that I stopped noticing when love stopped feeling like safety and started feeling like maintenance? That question is starting to change how I see everything I've built, even myself. And I don't like what I'm discovering, because it suggests something I've avoided my entire life. That emotional systems don't fail because of one person. They fail because of interaction patterns neither person fully sees in time. And now I am trapped in the most painful stage of that realization, where clarity is arriving faster than I can emotionally metabolize it. There was a moment today, a very small one. She looked at me as if she was about to say something important, and then didn't. She chose silence instead, and I nodded like it was normal, like it didn't matter, but it mattered more than anything else that happened today, because in that moment, I saw the border between what still exists and what is already gone, and I didn't step across it. I stayed on the wrong side, deliberately or not. That's the question I keep circling. Was I protecting the relationship or avoiding its truth? And I don't have a clean answer. Only fragments, like everything else in this house now. I think I'm close to something I'm not ready to fully understand yet, because I can feel the emotional story narrowing, like it's approaching a point where denial will no longer be structurally possible. And when that happens, something will have to give, either my understanding of her or my understanding of myself. And I don't know which one will survive that collapse. But I know I'm already inside it. I can feel it in the way I hesitate before speaking now, as if every sentence carries the weight of potential loss, even this one, especially this one. And I keep thinking about her again, not as someone I'm speaking about, but as someone I might be losing while speaking, and I don't know how to stop that process anymore. Because I think I already missed the moment where stopping would have mattered. There's a deeper truth here, one I'm circling without fully touching, and I can feel it preparing itself to be said, not gently, not comfortably, but inevitably, and when it arrives, everything I've said so far will feel like preparation rather than explanation. I just don't know if I'm ready for that level of honesty yet. But I also don't think I have a choice anymore, because whatever is happening in this house is no longer waiting for me to be ready. It's already unfolding, and I am just trying to keep up with the reality that is moving faster than my understanding of it. And somewhere in that imbalance is where things start to break beyond repair. I feel it now more than ever. The shift is not coming, it is already here. And I am standing inside it, still pretending I can interpret it safely. But I can't not anymore, and I think you can feel it too. Something is about to change in a way neither of us can reverse. And I am not sure what remains after that change. Only that I will have to face it. Whether I am ready or not, I didn't think it would come to this, not the situation, the understanding, because situations can be explained, but understanding changes everything you thought you were surviving on. When I woke up today, I didn't feel like something was ending. That's the most dangerous part. Endings are usually obvious in hindsight, but this felt like continuation. Like yesterday simply stretched itself into today, without asking permission from anything inside me. The house was quiet again, but now I understand that quiet differently. It's not absence of sound, it's absence of response. There is a difference I wish I had learned earlier in life, because sound can exist without meaning. But response always implies presence, and I'm no longer sure what is responding to me here. I walked through the same hallway again this morning, same floor, same light, same familiar structure, but something in me refused to treat it as familiar anymore. It felt like walking inside a reconstructed memory of my own life. Like someone rebuilt everything exactly as it was. Except the emotional signature was missing. And when emotional signature is missing, even perfection feels like loss. She was in the kitchen. That part is important because she was there, not gone, not absent. But still, I felt something I didn't expect: distance without movement. That's the only way I can describe it. She didn't look at me immediately, not because she was ignoring me, but because there was no automatic pull anymore, no instinctive recognition that used to exist between us. And I felt it like a physical correction in my chest, as if my mind finally admitted something my hope had been delaying. I almost spoke normally. I almost asked something ordinary, but something inside me stopped me, because I realized I didn't know what tone she would receive me in anymore. And when you lose confidence in emotional tone, even simple words become risks. She finally looked up, and I saw it again, that same thing from yesterday. Not anger, not sadness, not anything that can be reacted to cleanly. Just absence of arrival. Like she had to travel a long distance, internally, just to meet my eyes for a second, and I knew then, this wasn't a moment anymore, this was a condition. Something sustained, something ongoing. Something I had been calling confusion. Because I couldn't afford to call it what it actually was, I asked her something simple, something irrelevant, something safe. And she answered. Correctly, logically, but not emotionally. And that gap between correctness and presence is where relationships quietly disappear. I nodded, like I understood, but I didn't. Not really. And I think she saw that I didn't, because there was a pause after. A pause that felt like she was deciding whether to correct me, or let me continue living inside my own interpretation. And she chose silence again. That choice is becoming familiar now, too familiar. There is something I haven't told you yet, and I can feel it pressing harder now than before, not because I'm building up to drama, but because avoidance is starting to hurt more than truth. The truth is not what I thought it was. There was no external catastrophe in this house. Nothing broke physically that would explain the emotional fracture I've been describing. The terrible thing is not an event, it is recognition. I started realizing something over the last few hours that I didn't want to structure into language. Because once you structure it, you can't unstructure it again. And what I realized is this. She didn't suddenly become distant. She stopped compensating for distance I had already created long before I noticed. That's the part that changes everything. Because it removes the illusion that there was a single cause. There wasn't. There was accumulation, silent, mutual, untracked emotional drift. And I think I was the last one to notice because I was the most distracted by outcomes. I built too much life around solving external problems, improving systems, scaling outcomes, fixing visible inefficiencies, and I treated emotional continuity like something that would maintain itself if left unbroken intentionally. But love doesn't survive neglect by absence of harm, it survives presence. And presence is not passive, it has to be actively maintained. I failed to understand that distinction, and now I'm standing in its consequence. I found myself earlier, staring at something trivial, a chair slightly moved from where it usually is, and I realized something terrifying. I no longer trust my memory of how this house used to feel. Because emotional memory is not stored in objects. It is stored in interaction patterns, and when those patterns shift slowly enough, memory starts to feel like imagination. I keep trying to find a single moment where I lost her, but I'm beginning to understand that is the wrong question. Because there was no single moment, there was a series of small absences I didn't interrupt, and those absences became normalized, until normal itself changed shape. There was a moment today where she almost smiled, almost, and then didn't, and I swear that almost stayed longer than any smile ever did, because almost contains intention. And intention without completion is one of the most painful things to witness in someone you love. It tells you something still exists, but not enough to fully return. I sat down after that, not because I was tired, but because I felt something inside me reorganize, like my internal model of her had to update against my will. And I don't like what the update is suggesting. It suggests that she has been emotionally preparing for a version of life that does not include me in the same way I assumed. And I don't know when that preparation started, or how long I ignored the signs of it. But I can feel the coherence of it now, and coherence is dangerous, because once something becomes coherent, you can no longer dismiss it as coincidence. I tried to speak to her again later, this time more intentionally, not casual, not indirect. I asked something real, not dramatic, just real, and she paused longer than necessary before answering. And in that pause, I felt the full weight of something I cannot unfeel now. She is choosing words more carefully than she used to, not because she is hiding something, but because she is protecting something, and I think that something is herself. from the emotional friction of this relationship as it currently exists. That realization made me feel something close to fear. Not fear of losing her. Fear of realizing I might already be in the phase where losing has already happened internally before any external confirmation arrives, because that's how emotional systems end, internally first, externally later. And I think I am seeing the internal ending in real time. There is another truth I need to say now, and I have avoided it until this exact moment, because saying it will make everything irreversible in interpretation. I haven't been honest about the role I played in this drift, not because I was lying, but because I was assuming intention would protect impact. I thought being committed was enough. I thought consistency of presence in physical space was equivalent to emotional presence. But she didn't need consistency of presence. She needed consistency of recognition. And I don't think I gave her that at the level she required. That is the part I am struggling to accept without resistance, because accepting it changes the entire narrative I used to survive inside. And I can feel that narrative collapsing slowly as I speak. There was a point today where I almost asked her if she was still happy. But I didn't, because I realized I was afraid of the answer, not because of what she would say, because of what I would have to do after hearing it. And that fear alone tells me everything I need to know about how far things have already gone. I keep thinking about leaving the room she was in, not physically leaving.
Emotionally leaving.
Because there are moments in relationships where staying present becomes indistinguishable from prolonging something that has already changed form. And I am standing exactly in that moment. The hardest realization is not that something is ending. It is that it may have already ended in the way it mattered most, without anyone explicitly agreeing to it. And now we are both navigating the aftermath without a map. There was a sound again earlier. Same kind of small disruption. But this time I didn't react to it externally. I reacted internally because I realized something I didn't want to admit. I have started associating neutral events in this house with emotional uncertainty. That means my nervous system is no longer responding to events, it is responding to expectations of loss, and once that happens, perception itself becomes unstable. I stood there longer than necessary, waiting for something to clarify itself. But nothing did. And that silence, that unresolved continuity, is what finally made me understand where I am. I am not inside an event. I am inside a transition that has not yet finished defining its outcome, and she is part of that transition. But not necessarily aligned with me anymore. That is the sentence I avoided until now, because it changes everything. There is a moment I need to tell you about, and this is where everything narrows. She looked at me earlier today, longer than usual, not warm, not cold, just final in a way I didn't expect, and I felt, for the first time, that she was not trying to communicate something to me. She was measuring what remained, and I don't know what number she arrived at, but I know it wasn't the one I would have hoped for. I wanted to reach for her in that moment, not physically, emotionally, to bridge whatever gap was forming. But I didn't move, because I realized something even more frightening. I wasn't sure what version of me she would meet if I reached across that distance. And that uncertainty froze me, and freezing is also a decision, just a quieter one. Now I am here in the same house, but no longer inside the same emotional reality I entered it with. And I can feel something approaching its final internal shape, not resolution, not repair, something else, something that will define what happens after understanding fully arrives. And I am not sure I am ready for the version of truth that is still forming, but I can feel it becoming unavoidable. And I think you can feel it too now, because once you see emotional structure collapsing in real time, you can't unsee the direction it's moving in. And I am no longer sure whether I am trying to stop it or finally understand it before it completes itself.